Truth in History with Charles A. Jennings.
Welcome to Truth in History. Today, I'd like to talk about a very unusual man that's in the Bible. Very seldom hear about him, but yet we do hear some things about him, but we don't see the complete picture. And his name was Balaam. Now, I pray that in this study today, that we can get an understanding of somewhat of the fact that God can use less than perfect men. And He can use some very unusual men. And sometimes those men are good, and sometimes the same man is bad. Sometimes he'll speak the truth. Sometimes he will speak error. Sometimes they will do noble things, righteous things, and the next thing you know, they're doing something wicked. God has used men that have been of all types of nature, but this man seems to be the apex of somewhat of a puzzle as to why and how God used him in relationship to His people Israel. Now, first of all, I'd like to read a verse out of the book of Jude. And in verse 11 of the book of Jude, it says, "Woe unto them, for they have gone in the way of Cain, and ran greedily after the error of Balaam for reward, and perished in the gainsaying of Korah." Now, the book of Jude is talking about the apostates, those that went astray. And there are three men mentioned in this verse: Cain, Balaam, and Korah. But we will only talk about Balaam today. Now, Balaam's name, his very name gives him away. It means one not of the people. One not of the people. It means devour. Also, foreigner and subverter. In other words, that which is good, he can turn it upside down. He can subvert it. But it also means a subverter or a deceiver of the people. Now, we have to keep in mind concerning one thing about Balaam. He was not an Israelite. He was an Edomite. And he was the son of Beor. In Genesis 36, the chapter that talks about Esau, Edom, we see in verse 31 and 32, Genesis 36, "And these are the kings that reigned in the land of Edom, before there reigned any king over the children of Israel. And Bela, the son of Beor, reigned in Edom, and the name of his city was Dinhabah, or Dinhabah. What a name. And Balaam was the son of Beor, who was an Edomite. So, first of all, he come from a line of very wicked men. He came from a line of a wicked seed line, right straight from Esau, the father of the Edomites. Now, as we read in the book of Genesis, we'll turn to the book of Genesis, chapter number 7. And we all know the story of the early life of Israel in Egypt, the Israelites in Egypt. And Moses, we know the story of Moses, how he was born, how he was hidden in a basket on the river, how his life was saved, how he was raised in the king's palace, right under the influence of all the royalty of the house of Pharaoh. And then someone else was there. And turning to the book of Jasher, Jasher gives us some very good details concerning the life of Balaam in connection with the children of Israel in Egypt. And Balaam, this is what the Bible tells us about Balaam. What was his nature? Now, he was an Edomite, and there was a war going to take place. In the book of Jasher, this is chapter 61 and verse 5, Zepho, the son of Eliphaz, the son of Esau. So it was the Edomite line, captain of the host, and he was going to fight with the sons of Jacob in Egypt. And he had some servants. And verse number 8 tells us this. And among the servants of Angeas was a youth 15 years old. Balaam, the son of Beor, was his name, and the youth was very wise and understood the art of witchcraft. That is the first mention of the nature of Balaam that we find. It really doesn't tell us the nature of Balaam in the King James Bible, but it does in the book of Jasher. And he, through witchcraft, he told the people, he told the captain, he told Zepho that the Israelites were going to win the war, that the Israelites were going to win the war. And so right off, we see that this young man, 15 years old, practiced witchcraft. Now, also we see this concerning Balaam. Balaam was as he's growing up, he was very deceitful. I'm going to say charismatic, because he got into the very palaces of the different nations that existed in that day. He could go see the king of Egypt. He could go see the king of Chittim. He could go see the king of Moab or Ammon or some other king in that area. And he knew what to say to please them. And he was also for hire. This man was a soothsayer / prophet for hire. Are there any of those like that around today? Let me read you a few verses from the book of Jasher, chapter 64. And Balaam the son of Beor was at that time with Angeas in the battle, And when he saw that Zepho prevailed over Angeas, he fled from there and came to Chittim. Always wanting to be on the winning side. And Zepho and the children of Chittim received him with great honor. And Zepho knew Balaam's wisdom, and Zepho gave unto Balaam many gifts, and he remained with him. Now, that tells us something else. That Balaam was on the take. He was there to please whoever he could that had the power to give him something. Many gifts. We also see this. This is a different incident. And Balaam the son of Beor the Syrian was there in the camp of Zepho. For he came with the children of Chittim to the battle, and Balaam was a man highly honored in the eyes of Zepho and his men. And Zepho said unto Balaam, Try by divination for us, that we may know who will prevail in the battle, we or the Egyptians. And Balaam rose up and tried the art of divination, and he was skillful in the knowledge of it. But he was confused, and the work was destroyed in his hand. And he tried it again, but it did not succeed. And Balaam despaired of it and left it, and did not complete it. For this was from the Lord, in order to cause Zepho and his people to fall into the hands of the children of Israel, who had trusted in the Lord, the God of their ancestors, in their war. Now, see, he gets around. He's very sly. He is very charismatic. And he knows how to influence people. In chapter number 67, just picking up in the middle of the thought, because there's too much to read. And it was after the death of the king of Chittim that Balaam the son of Beor fled from the land of Chittim, and he went and came to Egypt, to Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And Pharaoh received him with great honor, for he had heard of his wisdom, and he gave him presents, and made him for a counselor, and aggrandized him, ingratiated himself with this man. And Balaam counsels Pharaoh. Now, this is very interesting, that Balaam actually prophesied. He was older than Moses, and he actually prophesied to Pharaoh that the Lord was going to send a man to destroy Pharaoh and the kingdom of Egypt. He actually prophesied that. And Balaam was standing before the king, and he said, You call all your counselors, because this thing is going to take place. A man is going to arise, and the God of heaven is going to use him against the kingdom of Egypt, and that man would be Moses. So Pharaoh called his counselors, and one counselor said one thing, and one counselor said another thing. And how do we avert this? How do we overcome these Israelites that are growing, that are multiplying in our land? And one counselor said one thing, and one counselor said another. But this is what Balaam said. Very significant. And I want to turn to the book of Exodus, chapter 1, and verse number 21. And then I'll tell you what Balaam said. And Pharaoh charged all his people, saying, every son that is born ye shall cast into the river, and every daughter ye shall save alive. He said unto the people of the land, every Hebrew boy that is born, I want you to cast him into the river. Why did he want to kill every firstborn? Every boy? Because Balaam had prophesied that God would send a man to overcome Egypt and to liberate the Israelites. So therefore Pharaoh said, well, in order for this boy not to be born or not to overthrow Egypt, grow up and be a man, we'll just drown every Hebrew boy that is born. Well, where did he get the idea to drown them? You see, he already had two counselors, and he said, no, I'm not going to go with number one or number two, but I will go with Balaam, who was the third counselor. And this is what he said. If it please the king, let him order all children which shall be born from this day forward to be thrown into the water. For by this canst thou wipe away their name, for none of them, nor of their fathers, were ever tried in this manner. Now there's your answer. It was an Edomite who tried in his counsel to prevent God's man Moses from being born or surviving and growing up and liberating the children of Israel. It was an Edomite. Here again, Herod, the Edomite, said to kill every Hebrew boy 2 years old and under, trying to kill Jesus. It was an Edomite. And you say we're not against a seed line of evil and wickedness? It was Balaam's counsel. It was Balaam's counsel, the counsel of an Edomite. Now, Balaam the hireling, he was a hireling. He was a prophet for profit. He was a soothsayer, and he was always on the take for money. Always on the take for money. Always watch out for a preacher or a spiritual leader that's always on the take for money and compiling unto himself millions of dollars and many pieces of property, and always accepting the accolades of men. Always, doing things to be seen in public for glory and for credit. In that part of the world in which Balaam lived, he counseled the king of Africa, Number 2, Zepho, an Edomite, king of Chittim. Number 3, he counseled Pharaoh. Number 4, he counseled in the land of Cush. Number 5, he counseled Egypt. Number 6, he counseled the Amorites. Number 7, he counseled Balak, the king of Moab. He just bounced around. Whoever would give him gifts or give him money, give him some kind of reward, he'd prophesy for him. Now, was he a man of character, sincerity, truth? No, he was not. Basically, I think he was a wicked man. He come from a wicked seed line. But God did use him in one critical area. Now, when we go to the next page, Balaam, how does this work? How does this really work in the spirit world? Where a man can get up behind the podium and preach some good things, preach Christ, and then turn right around and speak heresy. It's like a spirit takes over their mind and their understanding, and they will speak falsehood one time after speaking good. And they can go back and forth. And those false words can bring about some very serious consequences. And I see that happening in our day. Good men, even Israelite preachers, speaking heresy, which is bringing about chaos and unrighteousness and wickedness in our land. Moses and Balaam both stood before Pharaoh at the same time. We all know the story of how the Lord sent Moses to Pharaoh and said, "Pharaoh, let my people go. Let my people go." So we come to Genesis chapter 7 and verse 11. Then Pharaoh also called the wise men and the sorcerers. Now the magicians of Egypt, they also did in like manner with their enchantments. When Moses cast down his rod and it became a serpent, these magicians cast down their rod and it became a serpent. So we see in verse number 12, Exodus 7, "For they cast down every man his rod, and they became serpents, but Aaron's rod swallowed up their rods." But how did the magicians take a rod and throw it down on the ground and it become a serpent? Through magic. We go down to verse 22. Exodus 7, "And the magicians of Egypt did so with their enchantments. And Pharaoh's heart was hardened, neither did he hearken unto them as the Lord had said." He did not hearken unto Moses and Aaron. Now, in chapter 8 and verse number 7, it talks about the magicians again. And the magicians did so with their enchantments and brought up frogs upon the land. Moses brought up frogs. The magicians brought up frogs. We go to verses 18 and 19. And the magicians did so with their enchantments, with the lice, to bring forth lice, but they could not. Well, let me read that again. And the magicians did so with their enchantments to bring forth lice, but they could not. So there were lice upon man and upon beast. And the magician said unto Pharaoh, This is the finger of God. And Pharaoh's heart was hardened, and he hearkened not unto them as the Lord had said. So they could not bring up lice, so they recognized, hey, there's something beyond our power of enchantment and magic. Who were these men that stood before Moses? I want to go to the book of 2 Timothy. 2 Timothy chapter 3. 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 8 and 9. Paul said, Now as Jannes and Jambres withstood Moses. Now we have the two names of the men that withstood Moses before Pharaoh. So do these also resist the truth. Men of corrupt minds reprobate concerning the truth. But they shall proceed no further, for their folly shall be manifested unto all men, as theirs also was. So now we know the names of two magicians that stood before Moses. Well, who were these? In the book of Jasher, when we turn to this account of Moses and the magicians standing before Pharaoh, let me read you this verse. And when they had gone, Pharaoh sent for Balaam the magician and to Jannes and Jambres, his sons, and to all the magicians and conjurers and counselors which belonged to the king, and they all came and sat before the king. So who was Jannes and Jambres? The sons of Balaam. They were Edomites. And all three of them were prophets for profit. Magicians. Soothsayers. Now we know who Jannes and Jambres were. The sons of Balaam. He had taught his sons. As we progress in the story of the Israelites, we come to the book of Numbers. And we know that in Numbers chapter 24, in Numbers chapter 22, we see the account where Balak, the king of Moab, saw the people of Israel and said to himself and to his counselors, something has to be done about these Israelites because, man, they are camped out Look out over the valley. They're everywhere. They will outnumber us. They will conquer us. And we must do something about it. So what did he do? He calls on the old soothsayer. He calls on the old hireling. He calls on false prophet number one, old Balaam. Here comes old Balaam. And Balak said, if you will curse these people, I will promote you. Boy, didn't that sound good in the eyes or the ears or the plans of Balaam. Boy, he could say, man, my reputation has gotten around. The Lord warned him, don't go with the messengers of Balak. Don't go. Well, we know that he went. And when he went, Balak said to curse these people, curse the Israelites. But when he began to prophesy in Numbers 23, and he stood by the burnt sacrifice, and he stood by the princes of Moab. And this is Balaam's first prophecy. He gave 7 prophecies, and I want to read them all. Numbers 23, 7 through 10. Prophecy number 1. And he took up his parable and said, Balak, the king of Moab, hath brought me from Aram out of the mountains of the east, saying, come, curse me, Jacob, and come, defy Israel. How shall I curse whom God hath not cursed? Or how shall I defy whom the Lord hath not defied? For from the top of the rocks I see him, and from the hills I behold him. Lo, the people shall dwell alone. Boy, that was a wonderful, wonderful prophecy that came out of the mouth of this false prophet. And shall not be reckoned among the nations. Who can count the dust of Jacob and the number of the 4th part of Israel? Let me die the death of the righteous, and let my last end be like his. That's prophecy number 1. Prophecy number 2 is found in Numbers 24, starting with verse 15. Now, you know, Balak says, now let's sacrifice again. Let's sacrifice all these animals again. And every time they did it, Balaam gave a prophecy. And this is his second prophecy. And he took up his parable and said, Balaam the son of Beor has said, and the man whose eyes, chapter 23 and verse 15. I was in the wrong chapter. And he said unto Balak, stand here by thy burnt offering while I meet the Lord yonder. And the Lord met Balaam and put a word in his mouth and said, go again unto Balak and say thus, the Lord met Balaam. Even a soothsayer, he's putting his truth in the mouth of a deceiver. And when he came to him, behold, he stood by his burnt offering, and the princes of Moab with him. And Balak said unto him, what hath the Lord spoken? And he took up his parable and said, Rise up, Balak, and hear. Hearken unto me, thou son of Zippor. God is not a man that he should lie, neither the son of man that he should repent. Hath he said, and shall he not do it? Or hath he spoken, and shall he not make it good? Behold, I have received commandment to bless, and he hath blessed, and I cannot reverse it. He hath not beheld iniquity in Jacob, neither hath he seen perverseness in Israel. The Lord his God is with him, and the shout of a king is among him. And God brought them out of Egypt. He hath, as it were, the strength of a unicorn. Surely there is no enchantment against Jacob, neither is there any divination against Israel. According to this time, it shall be said of Jacob and of Israel, what hath God wrought? Behold, the people shall rise up as a great lion, and lift up himself as a young lion. He shall not lie down until he eat of the prey and drink the blood of the slain. Balaam could not curse Israel, but he blessed Israel. Yes, he blessed Israel. Out of the mouth of this hireling, he blessed the people of God. The third prophecy. Balak says again, now wait a minute, let's offer some more sacrifice, some more animals, and see what the Lord tells you this time. Chapter 24, verse 1. And when Balaam saw that it pleased the Lord to bless Israel, he went not, as at other times, to seek for enchantments, but he set his face toward the wilderness. And Balaam lifted up his eyes, and he saw Israel abiding in his tents according to their tribes, and the Spirit of God came upon him. You see, the Lord can use anybody that he wants to. And he took up his parable and said, Balaam the son of Beor has said, and the man whose eyes are open has said. He has said, which heard the words of God, which saw the vision of the Almighty, falling into a trance, but having his eyes open. How goodly are thy tents, O Jacob, and thy tabernacles, O Israel. As the valleys are, they spread forth, as gardens by the river's side, as the trees of line aloes, which the Lord hath planted, and as cedar trees beside the waters. He shall pour the water out of his buckets, and his seed shall be in many waters. And his king shall be higher than Agag, and his kingdom shall be exalted. And God brought forth him out of Egypt. He hath, as it were, the strength of a unicorn. He shall eat up the nations his enemies, and shall break their bones and pierce them through with many arrows. He couched and lay down as a lion, as a great lion. Who shall stir him up? Blessed is he that blesseth thee, and cursed is he that curses thee. Every time this hireling opened his mouth, he blessed the people of God, Israel. Now, going to chapter 24, verse number 14 through 19, he gives his fourth prophecy. These are marvelous prophecies, and they blend with the blessings that Jacob and Moses gave Israel. There's many parallels. Here's Balaam's fourth prophecy. And now, behold, I go into my people. Come therefore, and I will advertise thee what this people shall do to thy people in the latter days. And he took up his parable and said, Balaam the son of Beor has said, and the man whose eyes are open has said. He has said, which heard the words of God, and knew the knowledge of the Most High, which saw the vision of the Almighty, falling into a trance, but having his eyes open. I shall see him, but not now. I shall behold him, but not nigh. There shall come a star out of Jacob, and a scepter shall rise out of Israel, and shall smite the corners of Moab, and destroy all the children of Sheth. This is referring to Jesus Christ. A star out of Jacob, a scepter out of Israel. And Edom shall be a possession. Seir also shall be a possession for his enemies. In Israel shall do valiantly. Out of Jacob shall come he that shall have dominion, and destroy him that remaineth of the city. That is a powerful prophecy of the destruction of Edom and Moab and other wicked kingdoms. And it's a great prophecy, a messianic prophecy concerning the Lord Jesus Christ. And then his fifth prophecy is in verse number 20, chapter 24. And when he looked on Amalek, that's Edom, he took up his parable and said, Amalek was the first of the nations, but his latter end shall be that he perish forever. And that goes right along with the other prophecies concerning Edom. And then his number 6, verse number 21. And he looked on the Kenites, and he took up his parable and said, strong is thy dwelling place, and thou protest thy nest in a rock. Nevertheless, the Kenite shall be wasted until Asher shall carry thee away captive. Asher was the Assyrians. And then prophecy number 7, verses 23 to 25. And he took up his parable and said, alas, who shall live when God doeth this? And ships shall come from the coast of Shittim, and afflict Asher, and shall afflict Eber, and he also shall perish forever. And Balaam rose up and went and returned to his place, and Balak, he went back home also. He gave 7 prophecies. He blessed Israel every time, and he cursed the other nations. Now, when we come to chapter number 25, get the picture. Moab is over here. You know, the children of Lot, through incest, and they had mixed with Edom. And then here's Israel camped in the valley. And Balak says, how can we stop these people from invading us? What we'll do, we will devise a plan, and we will have a big feast. 25, verse 1. And Israel abode in Shittim, and the people began to commit whoredom with the daughters of Moab. They began to mix their blood. One way to bring the curse of God upon his people Israel is to marry foreigners. And they called the people unto the sacrifices of their gods. And the people did eat and bow down to their gods. Multiculturalism, multi-religious ceremonies. Come on over, sons of Israel, and look at our beautiful women. And you can partake in the sacrifices of our gods. You can mix your religion. Mix it. You can mix, today, I would say, mixing Christianity with Judaism or Islam or Shinto or some other religion that is not compatible with Christianity. Mix them together. Syncretism, they call it. And then we'll all just live together, happily ever after. But it doesn't work that way, because God has a plan for His people, and Balaam said they shall dwell alone and not be reckoned among the nations. Verse 3, and Israel joined himself unto Baal Peor, and the anger of the Lord was kindled against Israel. The anger of the Lord. Baal was the name of the idol god of Moab. And Peor was the name of the place where the idol was worshiped. The idol was Baal. The location was Peor. Baal Peor. And Israel, they were invited there, and they saw the beautiful women. They saw all the foreign heathenistic festival going on, and they thought, oh, this is beautiful. We can get along with this people. But God sent a plague among His people, and He cursed His people because they mingled their blood and they mingled their faith. That was Israel's sin. But where did they get this idea? Now, later on in the book of Numbers, chapter 31, there's a war between Israel and Midian. And it tells us clearly, and I just tremble at this thought. It bothers me because of the implication of what is taking place in our day. And this is it. Numbers 31. It says concerning Moses, and Moses was wroth or angry with the officers of the host, with the captains over thousands and captains over hundreds, which came from the battle, because they did not fully obey Moses' command. And Moses said unto them, have ye saved all the women alive? Moses told the people, and the children of Israel took all the women of Midian captive and the little ones, and took the spoil of their cattle and their flocks. But that was not the command. That was disobedience. And this is why Moses said to destroy them all. Verse 16, behold, these caused the children of Israel through the counsel of Balaam to commit trespass against the Lord in the matter of Peor, and there was a plague among the congregation of the Lord. Now, in that battle, Balaam was slain. That's verse 8. And Balaam also, the son of Beor, they slew with the sword. The Israelites did. But here's the picture, going back to what we were talking about earlier in chapters 22, 23, and 24. Balaam could not curse Israel. And the Lord gave him a blessing in his mouth towards Israel. But in his carnality and in his wisdom, serpentine wisdom, because this is the picture. Balaam was not altogether ignorant of the plan of God. He knew the plan and the will of God for Israel. To dwell alone and not be reckoned among the other nations. So after, when he could not curse Israel, he takes Balak aside, more or less, using my imagination, and he says, well, let me tell you something. Every time I sought God in order to curse Israel, He gave me a blessing to give to Israel. But let me tell you a secret. This is a way to get their God, Jehovah God, to bless or to curse His people Israel. Get them to mix their blood and mix their religion. Have the young men of Israel come over and have sexual relations with the women of Moab and Midian and participate in their heathen worship, and God Himself will curse them. Pretty conniving. Because if you read earlier in the book of Jasher, Balaam says, well, I'm of Abraham, and he was. And he was of Isaac, but he came through Esau. So he had a knowledge of the Almighty. He had a knowledge of the Abrahamic covenant. Wise, wisdom, knowledge. But his heart was wicked. But God used him in true prophecy. But yet in his heart, he was a conniving, devious devourer of people, wanting gifts, money, position. He was wanting honor. And he gave Balak that counsel. Create a multi-religious council and, a committee, and then tell the boys, you can have our women. Well, so when we come to the end of this study, there's three things about Balaam. First of all, in 2 Peter, chapter 2, let me find it here. 2 Peter chapter 2 and verse 15. Peter mentions Balaam, talking about false prophets, which have forsaken the right way and are gone astray, following the way of Balaam. Remember that phrase, the way of Balaam, the son of Beor, who loved the wages of unrighteousness. It showed a condition of his heart. He would work for anybody he loved the wages of unrighteousness in his heart. And sometimes I wonder, I'm not the final judge, but I wonder if so many preachers today who say good things and turn around and prophesy destructive things. They prophesy and preach, Jesus loves you, you need to be saved, salvation only in Christ, and then turn right around and promote multiculturalism or interracial marriage. Or let's team up with, the Jews or the Muslims or whoever. Speaking out of both sides of their mouth. If they do that because there's a love of gain in them. And elsewhere, it warns us to be aware of the men who think that gain is godliness. The way of Balaam is that he loved wages. Now Jude, verse 11. It says, the error of Balaam for reward. The error of Balaam was accepting the wages. He first loved the wages in his heart. Then with his hand, he accepted. That was the error of Balaam. And then in Revelation chapter 2 and verse 14, but I have a few things against thee, because thou hast there them that hold the doctrine of Balaam, which taught Balak to cast a stumbling block before the children of Israel, to eat things sacrificed unto idols, and to commit fornication. Committing fornication was mixing their blood. Israelites and Midianites and Ammonites and Moabites or Edomites in marriage. I mean, to me, that's quite plain. We can smooth it over. We can just, try to make it, massage it and make that verse go away, but it's there. And also to mix their religion, to eat things sacrificed unto idols. And any religion outside of Christianity is idolatry. Any religion outside of true apostolic Christianity is idolatry. So the doctrine of Balaam is to promote idolatry and fornication so that God will curse his own people. Now I want to read a verse back in Exodus chapter 23 and verse number 8. And thou shalt not take no gift, and thou shalt take no gift, for the gift blindeth the wise and perverteth the words of the righteous. So we see the end of Balaam. He was slain in the battle with the Midianites because he would bounce around, he would prophesy, he would take rewards from anybody that had a job for him. That nature, that characteristic, that attribute, I'm afraid, is still in some people today, that they will prophesy whatever benefits them. If dispensationalism is the most profitable doctrine, preach it. If Judeo-Christianity is the most profitable as far as money-wise, preach it. If, multiculturalism is the most profitable thing to teach from your pulpit, go ahead and teach it, because it'll bring in the money. That's the bottom line. We saw the picture in the Bible of Balaam, a devourer, a subverter of people, one who was not of the people or not of Israel, a deceiver. And I pray that God someday, somehow, will cleanse the pulpits of America to wake us up, to let us know that we are under a curse because we have committed idolatry and fornication. I would like to advertise our magazine. If you have never received a copy of our magazine, free of charge, we'll send it to you, put you on the mailing list, and send you future copies free of charge. Our purpose is to promote the truth and the gospel of this book, and to speak God's word without fear or favor. We ask for nothing. We ask for no pay. We ask for no favor. We want to speak the word of God, because I know myself, I'm just one voice that is here and gone tomorrow. But the word of the Lord shall stand forever. God bless.